like 1/8 to 1/16, 1/32 tooths. Now this is, I forgot, this was a King Palm. This is honey pot. So it was a 2-pack. One flavor was kiwi, the other was honey. And yeah, I enjoyed them both. They're very, very subtle and light. But you can stick like 2 grams, so 2 grams of haze up in here. So let me get the reading so we can go ahead and laughing. Cry now, laugh later, I guess. Get on my face. So medical marijuana provides significant improvements in cancer symptoms. Studies are showing, and this is from the Marijuana Moment. And I just go ahead and be honest, most of these are copy and paste versions of each other, where you go to MJ Biz, or sometimes CNN or Forbes will cover one of these articles, but they're pretty much just word for word something somebody already wrote. Like, if you notice that about the media, whatever the AP press says is pretty much what everybody else is saying. So it's not really that much creativity in media. But the good thing about, I believe, the Marijuana Moment, it goes more into the medicinal side, whereas MJ Biz, of course, the name Biz, talks about more industry takes over, sales, industry trends, things like that. And as much as I really use cannabis, I guess in my head it's recreational. It probably is really medicinal. It keeps me pretty calm and mellow, social, interactive, easygoing. It makes me pretty happy, and it keeps me like a pretty chill dude, pretty nice person. I believe, and I think most people are kind of like that. I don't want to cause any problems. I want to smoke with you. You know, in a perfect world, if you were like, hey, you want to smoke with me real quick? We ain't doing shit. We're just standing there like at the bus stop. Hey, you smoke? You want to smoke a J? Yeah, and I'm sure if you had the person you're asking had theirs, like, I'll match you, or I got. So we're not the type to really argue or really try and divide people. Okay. I just tried to ensure I left enough time to where I wouldn't skip through the article this time. Okay. There we go. A new study of medical marijuana patients in Minnesota finds that people with cancer who use cannabis report significant improvements in cancer-related symptoms. Nevertheless, it notes that the high cost of marijuana can be burdensome to less financially stable patients, and it raises the questions about affordability and the access to this type of therapy. Well, okay. My first thought, just to kind of make this easier and so I don't forget, I'll go point by point on all of these articles. The thing about that is cannabis really shouldn't be that high costing. The fact that, I guess the reason the black market is still alive is because it's actually cheaper to buy street weed than it is to buy dispensary weed. And, the legalities, all that, got to have your ID, it's got to be valid and all that crap. They want to scan it. But, barring that, the fact that it's not the dispensary's fault either. It's not the farm's fault. They have to pay, like $1 million for a license, and then like $250,000 to distribute it and manufacture it and whatnot. So it's not their fault. They want to make cannabis affordable. That's why some of these people actually got into it for the medicinal purpose of it. That's why some of them are growing. But as far as when it comes to a consumer, the state's trying to get paid. And that's why I'm changing my opinion. But when I keep doing the Virginia governor vetoing the bill, is I was on his side. You can grow 4 plants in Virginia. Why are you trying to bring in something so we can create this revenue? I get that we can create revenue, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's right. But if that is what Virginians really want, I think he should let Virginians have what they really want. If that seems to be the case, I'm kind of leaning more with the normal advocate or whatever, the normal activist who's trying to help change the Virginia state law. But weed doesn't have to be that expensive. The reason I picked the Future Cannabis Project is there was plenty of growers on there that started growing pretty much for dispensary purposes to pretty much give plants away to people who really needed it. People with PTSD, people with heart conditions, like gastrointestinal, I think, ailments, spasms, things like that. So they got into it for the medicinal side. People always come in and try and regulate things, trying to find some way where they can get some money out of it. Like, I'm old enough to remember before OSHA. Like, I worked for like 2 or 3 years. Then all of a sudden there was this company called OSHA and you had to abide by what they say. And I was like, where did that come from? How did this happen? There's posters everywhere. Like, how did they just take over? Kind of like raw at a dispensary. How did that happen? So cannabis should be affordable, especially for these patients. How is it not free? How is that not, say, like a stipend is going towards their medical bill or whatever, from insurance, say, or a state-funded insurance, some kind of like Section 8 voucher for cannabis for these people. All right, the report published late last month in the journal Cannabis looked at 2 responses to a survey with patients who had cancer who enrolled in that Minnesota medical cannabis program. What all of this article is about from Marijuana Moment. In addition to asking questions about patients' cancer histories, cannabis use, and symptom changes, the survey also included psychodemographic questions, socio-demographic questions. So I guess income, class, rural, suburb, farm, they asked everything. And I guess that makes sense to try and see, could it be you just started walking around the lake and that's what lowered your heart pressure versus actually smoking while you're walking by the lake. That makes sense. You got to get all the variables covered, what you ate, all that stuff to make it true. Results show that while the overwhelming majority of patients reported symptom improvement associated with medical cannabis use, individuals not living comfortably on their present income probably did not. Give me a second. On their present income had a higher monthly out-of-pocket cost for cannabis, and they were more likely to stop using cannabis and use it less than they would like to. And this group was more cited cost. Okay, and this group more often cited cost as the reason for cannabis use disruption. While both were living comfortably, and the not living comfortably groups typically used cannabis daily and reported a high degree of symptom improvement, the study says. Patients in the not living comfortably group more often stopped and used cannabis less frequently than they would like, 54% versus 32%. So out of the 54% of the not living comfortably people, 32% reported improvement. Okay, so frequent citing cost as a reason, and 89% to 39% of the reason. I don't get those numbers, but I'm reporting them. Feel comfortable it's accurate. Patients who were not living comfortably under the current income also tended to be enrolled in a state medical cannabis program for longer, make marijuana purchases more frequently, and use more high THC products versus their more financially comfortable counterparts. Okay, so from what I'm understanding, I couldn't interpret that last bit of information. It just seemed like to me, out of that, 59 versus 52 versus 39%, and the 85 versus 39%, that basically most of the people couldn't afford it, but everybody claimed to have improvements from using cannabis. Just some had to stop because they couldn't afford it. And out of those people who couldn't afford it, they basically had to go for higher THC things and use it less, versus the people who actually had money had a choice of, maybe just going for flavor versus specifically for their ailment. So more of, I guess, a physical ailment reliever. It would be a mental ailment reliever, which kind of makes sense. They have the luxury to pick versus these people just have to go straight body effect and medicinal with the higher THC purchases with less money. Let's say that. Notably, however, researchers observed no evidence for a significant difference in any of the self-report effects on symptoms burdening between the living comfortably and not living comfortably groups. So there was no evidence of a significant difference between the two groups. So I'm interpreting that as, even though every one of those people are using it medicinally, even though the group who was living comfortably and could pick and choose, they still reported the same amount of significant effects with cannabis. So the mental aspect, not just the physical aspect, played a part in it as well. There's something to be said for it, I guess. Okay, so patients with pain, insomnia, and stress, anxiety, depression had the largest benefit from cannabis use, with patients reporting improvements in the symptoms ranging from 83 to 91%. Dang. So anybody with, let me see, what is this? Anxiety, depression, pain, and insomnia, it reported an 83 to 91% improvement. Jeez. So then, I guess your stuff works, huh? I'll buy a pallet. The proportions of patients reporting improvements from anorexia and digestive symptoms were 69 to 80%. Dang. So the gastro thing I was trying to say, probably the digestive symptoms was probably a lot easier to get out. So 69 to 80%, and about half the respondents reported improvements in fatigue and neurotherapy. So nerve pain, body aches, those things. So at the low end of any improvement overall, it was 69% and as high as 91%. But out of that 91%, a lot of those were people dealing with mental issues. That's cool. The lower end of the 69 and 83% are more on the physical pain side, but everybody reported a benefit from at least 69% on the 91. Almost no respondents reported that they had any symptom that got worse after the cannabis use. Bingo. Nobody said anything got worse, and that was more important. There was only improvement, a 69 to 91% improvement. Nobody said anything got worse. Okay, so authors from Health Partners Institute and the University of Minnesota and the Minnesota Department of Health noted in the report that while medical cannabis is increasing, used to manage cancer-related symptoms, insurance companies and healthcare plans do not reimburse medical cannabis, leaving patients responsible for all the associated costs. Now that's basically, I guess, what I was talking about earlier. They had gotten to that. Why is this not covered if they are? Well, that's the reason they're doing this study, to make it undeniable that, hey, insurance should be covering this. I don't know how much y'all care about the news, and I don't know. I know that I'm like kind of on the lower end of YouTube. I'm coming off of a copyright strike and everything. If you go live and make videos on the same channel and keep the lives up, it messes your channel up. But so it's hard for me to kind of gauge views. I went from being in like the hundreds, like 112s, to now in the like 30s. But I wanted to do news on basically what is the NHL and Major League Baseball, the NBL, are about to waive the cannabis requirements and their drug testing. So they're about to let people use cannabis and CBD products to relieve their ailments in hockey and baseball, the National Hockey League and Major League Baseball. So it is getting more respect. With that happening, I believe, what is it? Amazon dropped their cannabis drug test requirements overall, and So the Major League Baseball, Amazon is a drug requirement, and now this study is pretty much saying that it's only benefits from cannabis. So this can be a claim to push the insurance companies to give you some kind of subsidy or discount on your medical cannabis if you are a patient, and especially in this program, if nothing else. Together, our findings raise questions around health equity with regards to access to medical cannabis among those with cancer. If cannabis is indeed effective and reduces cancer symptoms, all patient groups, and especially those most vulnerable, should have access to cannabis if they wish to, calling for interventions to make medical cannabis more affordable. And I definitely agree with that. There should be some kind of voucher or whatever. What's the thing, like, they pay you not to farm? So they should, that kind of shows a way. I know that's a different category, but that's paying somebody to do something from the government to a normal person. From the government to a cannabis farm. Hey, we're in this program the same way that some farm companies basically are the ones who feed the food pantries, these lower budget farm or lower budget marketing companies that feed the food pantries. They still make milk or pasteurized milk. They still make beans, but they're not necessarily companies you see in the grocery store. I guess lower quality. I don't know if that's necessarily the case, but I really tend to believe it's just a matter of who buys your stuff is how great it's going to be. But the government is paying farms to do things, so why not a Section 8 voucher for medical patients to go to the dispensary and then to the farm? Pretty much the medical, the count limit that you're able to purchase per month in the dispensary should be allotted to these cancer patients at a discount, while the dispensary and the farm are reimbursed or subsidized by the government to facilitate this, as well as insurance picking up on it at least, let's just say, like a 10-20% discount. Okay, I understand you don't want to go into this field, but I think there's something to be said for this. But I guess it's the same thing with like birth control not being on insurance. It's a different game. Oh, cool, thank you. I'm glad. I'm trying to have more fun with it. I'm trying to exude my happiness and exude a little bit more personality. So I'm glad that you enjoy my new videos. Thank you very much. I'm trying. I don't realize I have as much, I guess, editing technique or talking presentation technique as I give myself credit for. But thank you very much, Stephen. I appreciate it. So where are we at? Where we at in this video? Is there any more stats? Okay, we're a little more than halfway done. Okay. If cannabis is to be a broadly available way to alleviate symptoms burdening patients with cancer, insurance coverage will ultimately be a need to ensure all patients can access it equally. So there we go. They've mentioned it twice in this article from this is the Minnesota Department of Health reporting on this. They've made 2 pushes mentioning the insurance companies like, hey, you might want to cover this if people getting real benefit out of it. 69-91%. A separate government report out of Minnesota on chronic pain patients enrolled in the state's medical marijuana program found that patients are finding a noticeable change in pain relief within a few months of starting treatments. So this is still the Minnesota Department of Health, but this is a separate study saying that, yeah, after using this stuff, I feel a lot better. They leaning. The large-scale study of nearly 10,000 patients also showed that nearly a quarter who were taking other pain relievers reduced the use of the other drugs after using medical marijuana. Boom. So hold on, what's that? 2,500 Out of 10,000 people in the program, 2,500 of them either stopped or reduced using their medication once they started using cannabis. Real results, baby. 69, 91%. Dang, 2,500. 2,500 patients out of 10,000, so a quarter of the patients pretty much either stop using medication or reduce the use of it. That's important. Excuse me, let me get a little couple pokes in. Let me get my mind right. Give me a taste, Jimmy. Give me a taste. All right. So the report also found that among healthcare practitioners who reported their patients were taking other medications for pain management, nearly a quarter, 24.6%, reported the reduction in pain medication in the last 6 months after starting the use of medical cannabis. So, okay, so that's actually what happened. They were paraphrasing and making it sound good for marketing, but realistically, it took 6 months to get results. But that's good to know. That's fair. That's fair. That's fair. Meanwhile, the United Cancer Institute, the NCI, estimated late last year that between about 20% and 40% of people being treated for cancer are using cannabis products to manage side effects from the condition and associated treatment. So, okay. So, separate study, I guess not cannabis related. This is from the Cancer Institute. They're basically asking, hey, how you treating your cannabis? How you treating your cancer? And they're like, hey, 20% of them are using cannabis to treat their cancer. So, something to be said for that. That's important. Hold on, I'm trying to get my other headphone. Come on, give me a taste, Jimmy. Give me a taste. There we go. And so I'm using that to help. Using the other headphone to help me, I guess, focus and balance. Do my thing. There we go. Okay. Yeah, all results. So this is three separate studies that are reporting all benefits from cannabis with cancer. Study 1, 69 to 91%. Separate cancer study. Out of 10,000 people, a quarter of them, 2,500 people, basically either reduce or stop using their medication within 6 months. Report number 3, out of all their patients, 20% of them report using cannabis to help alleviate their things. So this isn't even within a study. This is just people on the street and they're using cannabis. So 3 the hard way on you. The growth and popularity of cannabis products among people with cancer has tracked with the increasing number of states that have legalized cannabis for medical use. But research has lagged on whether and which cannabis products are safe and effective way to help cancer-related symptoms and treatment-related side effects. So, okay, and basically there are products out there, but there's really no compass on which one they are. And that is due to advertising, banks not backing cannabis. You can't have a bank account because it's not federally legal. It's this gray area. I think there are some people who have started to lean more that way to banking with cannabis cannabis companies and farms. But overall, it's really in a real state of limbo. But there are products out there. Yeah, it's due to advertising. There's no one to steer you in the right direction. There's no, Louis Vuitton of cannabis known to anybody, or there's no Gucci known to anybody that, hey, this is the product you want to use for hip pain. Hey, this is the product you want to use for migraines. This is the product you want to use for shoulder pain. There's none of that. Hey, if you got stomach pains, rub this on your stomach. Use a tincture, use a gummy. You smoke a flower. There's no navigating this whole thing. So I will agree with that, and that's just due to that legal gray area. Included in the research cited in the National Cancer Institute was a series of scientific reports published in the journal Monographs. The package of 14 articles detailed the results of broad, federally funded cannabis surveys of cancer patients from a dozen agencies designated cancer centers across the country, including in areas where marijuana is legal, permitted only for medical purposes, and still outlawed, I guess, recreationally is what it's going to be. Yeah. So, they're also, so that's Article 4. Article 4. No, that's still Article 3. They're mentioning that the more it pops up, the more people are understanding that, yeah, this stuff works. More people are willing to try it. So I agree, at a certain point, it's going to be enough voices to where insurance companies are going to have to respect this in some sort of way. In all, just under a third of patients reported using cannabis, with respondents reported that they use cannabis primarily to treat cancer and treatment-related symptoms such as difficulty sleeping, pain, and mood changes. The most common perceived benefits were for pain, sleep, stress, and anxiety, and the treatment side effects, the report says. Okay, so yeah, the same thing as the first one. It's like 69 to 91% of people are expecting benefits in this survey. So I would extrapolate that to everybody, and this would be some of the everybody that were getting common perceived benefits from pain, sleep, stress, and anxiety, like the first report was saying. That those are the people who were most affected from the living comfortably and non-living comfortably survey portion of everything, and the people who weren't living comfortably would have used cannabis more, but they couldn't afford it, and that's what stopped their overall usage. I guess when times got tough, cannabis had to go. So other recent research on the possible therapeutic value of lesser known compounds in cannabis found that a number of minor cannabinoids may have anti-cancer effects on blood cancer that warrant further study. So blood cancer is another one, and they're just tapping into that hey, this one, I didn't even know there was blood cancer. Now that I think about it, I just glossed over that. Sheesh. Latif, how you doing? Yeah, we're just going over the undeniable benefits of cannabis and the insurance companies respecting it. And I think that's one of the main things that Amazon was able to do. I was talking about that when they dropped the cannabis in their drug policy, that you were able to use cannabis and still work there and pass a drug test at the Amazon as an Amazon employee. This Minnesota survey and also the National Institute are making a huge claim for basically 69 to 91% of people that use cannabis to treat some cancer or a cancer related symptom are all receiving benefits from it. So thanks for joining us. Cheers to you. We on beer number 2. I'm trying to finish the body count out, but my reading, jeez, take me that long to read this thing? I know I can't read, but sheesh. While cannabis is widely used to treat certain symptoms of cancer and some side effects of cancer treatment, there's long been interest in the possible effects of cannabinoids on cancer itself. So they're trying to just cut the middleman out and use cannabis on every cancer. And it seems to have worked. As a 2009 lecture review found, the majority of studies have been based on the vitro experiments, meaning that they had not involved human subjects, but rather isolated cancer cells from humans, while some of the research used mice. Consistent with the latest findings, the study found cannabis showed potential in slowing the growth of cancer cells and even in killing cancer cells in certain cancers. Ooh. In certain cells, perhaps. A separate study found that some cases, different types of cancer cells affected by the same part of the blood appeared to respond differently to various cannabis extracts. So this is Going back to Sam Skunkman, which he was trying to tap into with Sativex and Epti, I forget, they were isolating cannabinoids, trying to find out what exactly, specifically, what ailments that these cannabinoids treated. And it sounds exactly like that. But, what, 80 something, 90 something, 30 years later, 40 years later, they're perfecting it. Like, some people have to walk before everybody else can fly. And this reminds me of Mendel. Basically, he did all his research and pretty much nobody cared. He retired and became a monk. And like 12 or 20 years later, it's a 2 in it, I don't remember which one, but let's just go with 20. 20 years later, people started doing the research he was doing, and started asking, hey, has anybody else done any experiments like it? And find out, yeah, like 20 years ago, 12 years ago, Mendel did it. Like, oh, okay. So very interesting. But sometimes it takes time. So Sam Skunkman, Dave Watson, who recently died, we did the Legends last week. And the week before that, he basically died in January. He was on this type of research. So he does live forever. He was a legend. Research published last year also found that marijuana use was associated with improved cognition and reduced pain among cancer patients and people receiving chemotherapy. So, wow, they say it makes you like lethargic and burnt out, but they're claiming like, hey, this helped with like being aware and I guess motor skills, being in the moment, being coherent with people who experience chemotherapy. Interesting. I understand that can make you lethargic. While cannabis produces intoxicating effects and the initial high can temporarily impair cognition, patients who use marijuana products from state-licensed dispensaries over 2 weeks actually started reporting clearer thinking, and the study from a study from the University of Colorado. These states are on our side: Minnesota, Colorado, University of Colorado. Oh, yeah, University of Colorado. It's undeniable. Oh, man. That was it? Nice. Okay. I hope that was good enough research. That was some marijuana moment. Cannabis has improved cancer symptoms. That's the article.